an age where most video games tend to get ported or remastered at some point, there's a dizzying array of PS2 games that still haven't been released on modern platforms and now find themselves in console jail. These are their stories. I'm Jimmy for Culture Vultures, and these PS2 games are still stuck on here. They're still in there. Like that Matt Damon movie. I remember when I went to see that at the cinema, right? And I went to the ticket booth and I went up to like the guy there and I went, "Oh, 2 tickets for Stuck on You, please." And he looked at me for a second, he paused and went, "Oh, is it now?" I'll never forget that. I was 12 years old. Why did he say that? Why did he say it like that? This one's for all of you sickos who keep commenting for us to talk about this game. Again, you have been seen. Oh, you look nice in that. Previously mentioned in our video on PS2 games that need a remake, BottleCapDave is the kind of wonderfully bonkers game that the PlayStation 2 was proud to house. The PS2, by the way, is probably the closest thing we have to a kaiju machine. Lots of big things battering other big things in a destructible city on the little guy, right? But BottleCapDave, which I'm just going to call Rad from here on out, doesn't actually have any kaiju itself, in the strictest sense of the word at least, as you'll instead be piloting a massive robot to help you repel an alien invasion. It's also as insane as you'd expect for the first game from the studio behind Earth Defense Force. What is kind of unexpected here though is how Rad is laid out. You're piloting the giant robot remotely, meaning that you have to stay safe as you're ultimately an unfortunately very squishy and vulnerable to buildings falling on them human being. You can run away to a safe spot while a separate scene, typically of destruction, plays out at the top left of the screen, which is a nice touch. Elsewhere, the visual novel-esque storytelling also feels a little bit like a precursor to other similar games, with plenty of bonkers characters to be endeared by. Rad has a pretty, not gonna lie, nonsensical story, and the English voiceover is so bad it's good. But look, ultimately, punching giant robots through buildings is never getting old. I loved it when I was 5 years old, and I'll love it when I'm 75. Even though it didn't sell too well, it's just weird that a port of this feels forbidden. Horror fans often reminisce about the PS2 era, a time when developers were free to experiment with atmospheric terror without worrying about the marketability of jump scare compilations on YouTube. Among the many forgotten gems of that golden age of survival horror is Forbidden Siren 2, a sequel in a series also called simply Siren that, despite having 3 entries and even a movie adaptation, has become increasingly forgotten as years go by. It probably doesn't help that Forbidden Siren 2 released everywhere except the US. Forbidden Siren 2 blends old school survival horror with stealth and a big old spooning of psychological terror as you control various cast members navigating a mysterious isle. Siren's big gimmick is sightjacking, which allows players to look through the eyes of enemies. Players are mostly forced to sneak past enemies, and you'll often find yourself unarmed or with limited weaponry. Developed by Sony's Japan studio, Forbidden Siren 2 received solid, if not spectacular, reviews. Still, the Siren series has a cult following, and thanks to the weird, brilliant sightjacking mechanic, it has remained popular among survival horror aficionados, but it is miles away from mainstream popularity. The Siren series, which was also created by the creator of Silent Hill, just might not be popular enough to warrant bringing this curio to modern consoles. It's odd considering the first game did get a recent PS5 port though, but it seems like the second game is difficult to emulate. Currently, if you want to venture to Yamajima Island, you might have to dust off that DualShock 2 and also pay a good chunk of money. You only live once though, eh? Capcom is a hard company to predict at times. They're either making some of the best games on the market and earning the nickname Cap God, or they're not porting God Hand as much as Resident Evil 6. Sort it out, gang. God Hand could also be in this video, but there's only so many times I can talk about the big monkey in it before resorting to a Harambe pun, and I'm better than that. And he was the best of us. On the PlayStation 2, Onimusha felt like a real tentpole franchise for Capcom, but aside from a fairly bare-bones remaster of the first game, Capcom had been content to let the samurai demon slasher series stay in hibernation. Onimusha 2, 3 and Dawn of Dreams have all been left on old hardware, but Onimusha 3 is a bit of an outlier as it did receive a Steam release in 2007, but the PC port was then delisted a few years later, meaning it's back in PS2 prison. In fairness to Capcom though, there might be a reason why Onimusha never received any more releases after that HD re-release of the first game, as according to reports, it might have sold way below Capcom's own modest expectations. Still, there's a die-hard fanbase clamouring for any Onimusha they can get, and the announcement of that new game re-fired neurons I thought were long dead. When I saw those souls floating about in the trailer, I genuinely nearly started floating out of my chair and ascending. Some kind of full bundle with the first 3 games with Dawn of Dreams thrown in for good measure is now a pretty obvious win for Capcom ahead of the release of the new games, so they'd be dumber than the average Nightmare main not to do it. Soul Calibur on the Dreamcast is considered among the best games ever made, while Soul Calibur 2 gained all the notoriety in the world with its multi-platform release and platform-specific guest characters. With all of that acclaim for those first 2 games, where does that leave Soul Calibur 3? Even feels like Namco were content to leave the game stuck on the PS2, considering Soul Calibur 1 and 2 both received HD ports for more recent platforms, though those ports have since been delisted too. Can't have shit on this digital bitch of an earth, it seems, and while many would love to see the second game come back again, it'd be amazing to see Soul Calibur 3 finally released from its PS2 only confines. Especially when the aggressively fine Broken Destiny got a PS5 and PS4 port?
Why did you do that? Funny.
Continuing the tale of Souls and Swords eternally retold, Soul Calibur 3 refined the weapon-based combat even further while introducing new characters that have become mainstays in the franchise since, such as Tira and Zasalamel. Soul Calibur 3 was also the first entry in the series to include character creation, which has become a huge and unique selling point for the Soul Calibur franchise compared to other fighters on the market. However, it's the impressive array of modes that makes Soul Calibur 3 so special, such as the Tales of Souls mode, which improves on the traditional fighting game arcade ladder by adding more interactive choices and unique moments per character. Also, Chronicles of the Sword somehow blends fighting games and the RTS genre, and it works? Shame Soul Calibur 4 went so far downhill.
This is as I can go. I don't think so.
Just to let you behind the curtain slightly, the original version of this script did include the first Time Splitters game, something that had been forgotten about compared to TS2 and Future Perfect, which are backwards compatible on Xbox. Then, Embracer decided to do one thing right and port it to PS5. One single thing. Still, there's no shortage of stranded PS2 games, so let's talk about Downhill Domination instead. Compared to the various shooters and action games already mentioned in this video, a game about bolting it down the side of a mountain as fast as possible on a couple of barely held together metal bars and some tyres is quite the change of pace, but that doesn't mean there isn't plenty of action to enjoy in Downhill Domination either. Racers can throw fists, bottles and planks of wood at each other while racing, making Downhill Domination a thrilling and enjoyable affair. Essentially SSX with wheels, Downhill Domination allows players to pick from several larger-than-life characters and embark on a world-trotting career mode, competing in races and trick events across mountains both real and fictional. The speed and physics of Downhill Domination give the game a distinctly arcadey feel, which should prevent you from becoming too annoyed if you keep slamming headfirst into a rock wall at 80 miles per hour. With wins comes money that you can use to unlock new upgrades for your bike, along with new characters, including a few real-life pros. Perhaps the mix of pros and licenses have been the reason why Downhill Domination never made it off the PS2. Or maybe it's because of developer Incognito Entertainment's dissolution before 2010, but the fact that Downhill Domination hasn't been ported to modern platforms is disappointing. If, Ape Academy 2 can get ported, why not Downhill Domination? No shade to the apes though.
The wind shields me.
These days, people like to bat around the idea that From Software wrote the book on video game difficulty. But they're just another chapter in a tome that's been tattered and beaten relentlessly, like me when I tried to defeat Soldier of Godric. Give me back my wife, you knave! Games like Shinobi, specifically the ones from the early Sega era, have been causing controllers to be spiked into the ground for years before people had to rest at bonfires to recover all their healing items. Sega brought the Shinobi series to the PS2, converting it into 3D in the process and making it more like a hack-and-slash spectacle fighter, and one that still slaps today. But today, we're talking about the forgotten sequel, Nightshade. Yes, it's mainly because Shinobi had a PS3 port at some point, leave us alone. A follow-up to Shinobi from 2002, Nightshade casts players as...
Get ready, everybody. He's about to do something stupid.
Kunoichi Hibana as she tries to stop the villainous Nakatomi Corporation after they've unleashed demonic hellspawn on a futuristic version of Tokyo. Clearly Nakatomi was at a loss for ideas of where to take the company next after that 1988 Christmas party incident. Unfortunate shared corporation names aside, Hibana is also tasked with assembling the shards of the cursed blade Akujiku, battling her former mentor and his new cabal of shinobi in the process. It's a fairly linear character action experience, but one that's worth your time if you're looking for something underappreciated with some pretty fantastic graphics and lightning fast action. And also jigglier jiggle physics than jelly on a bouncy castle during an earthquake started by Yokozuna. Hey, speaking of jiggles... Don't ever say that we don't listen to the comments. Some of you have been pestering us about champions for a while now. Well, here you go. We've mentioned it. Again, is it everything you've ever dreamed of? Are you floating away? Do you see the light? Is your first cat there? Ah, Sooty, you are as beautiful as the day I lost you. It's not really surprising that Champions of Norath, Realms of EverQuest became as successful and beloved as it did within the PS2 crowd, as developers Snowblind Entertainment created the game using the engine they made in their previous game, Baldur's Gate Dark Alliance. Sure, the character creation might have been limited in comparison to the EverQuest MMO, but you were still swimming in options. Players could pick from one of 5 pairs of races and classes, ranging from barbarian warriors to high elf clerics, with each offering their own skills and abilities. The main gameplay resembles Diablo, as you're exploring areas, completing quests, and diving into dungeons, all with the view of killing evil monsters and, crucially, earning better and better loot. While up to 4 players can enjoy the game on a single console, you could also form adventuring bands online, taking the fight to the orcs, vampires, and demons standing in your way. Champions was ahead of its time in a whole bunch of ways, and it did actually get a sequel by the name of Return to Norath in 2005. We're watching, so we need to see if they might do something with this IP again. The Wild West is always a fun setting to explore, but making it supernatural is just the extra chef's kiss that makes the setting really sing. Dubbed the Weird West genre thanks to DC's Weird Western Tales and the Jonah Hex character from the 70s, seeing cowboys and bandits being forced to deal with threats and monsters that aren't of our world is endlessly entertaining. High Moon Studios seem to agree, developing Darkwatch for the PS2 for release in 2005. While reviews and sales didn't point to the greatest game ever made, fans of the game have been helping rehab Darkwatch's reputation years later, to the point now where Darkwatch is definitely among the PS2's many cult classics and one of its better FPS games. Dropping vampires into the Wild West, Darkwatch sees players controlling the very coolly named Jericho Cross, a jaded Civil War vet turned bandit turned half vampire, after he inadvertently releases the most powerful vampire the West has ever seen. Recruited into Darkwatch as punishment for his crimes against them, Jericho begins to develop his own vampiric powers alongside his impressive array of weapons, with various choices and options you encounter throughout the game leading to you unlocking different good or evil path powers. Pretty neat. While Darkwatch never got a sequel, those who enjoyed the more recent PS2 Arth Evil West might find a new gem here. Graffiti Kingdom is probably among the most unique platformers on the PS2, as you're given the ability to sketch your own creatures using the in-game tools, allowing you to create some absolutely hideous monstrosities, or if you're actually skilled with the tools, recreate iconic characters from other properties. These creatures can then be called upon to help you during the game, allowing you to directly control the monsters in combat and while exploring. On top of that, Graffiti Kingdom also utilizes RPG elements, allowing you to level up both your main character, Prince Pixel, unlocking new tools in the creature creation mode and also the creatures you've created, increasing their health and attack power. All of this will help Pixel on his quest to reseal the devil he accidentally unleashed upon the kingdom. Graffiti Kingdom is actually the second game in the series, with the first game, Magic Penguin: The Quest for Color, playing like a Pokemon game with a create a creature function. It's unfortunate that both games have been relegated to the PS2, as both are uniquely innovative explorations of already established genres. In Magic Penguin's case, the monster collecting RPG had only been around for a couple of years, so giving the player the ability to design their own monsters instead of trying to catch ones the developers have made added a new and interesting wrinkle to the experience. Meanwhile, Graffiti Kingdom's use of creature creation gave the player more attachment to the abilities that they needed to utilize. Instead of just having a generic creature in your roster with better jumping, you can name him Hoppy McHopperstein, give him big old bug eyes, paint him however you like, and live happily ever after. Forever. Crikey, where to begin with this one? Well, it was originally released for PC. The operative No One Lives Forever was ported to PS2 in 2002. Considered by reviewers at the time to be one of the best shooters since the original Half-Life, No One Lives Forever is set in the 1960s with players controlling a secret agent called Kate Archer. The whole game skewered both the general 1960s sense of style and fashion, along with many spy films and TV shows that launched around that time. Imagine a whole game based on the Avengers and you're about there. You know, the old British TV series and not the one with the superheroes. No One Lives Forever crams in plenty of cool gadgets, groovy outfits and overtly evil villains cackling in their secret bases, making it a pretty accurate parody. It's also incredibly fun to play, blending stealth with its more action-focused sections. So, what happened? Well, the operative No One Lives Forever is a now infamous instance of abandonware, as not only did the follow-up game skip the PS2 entirely, all 3 NOLF games were only available to buy physically, even on PC. How PC gaming existed before Steam, no one will ever know. Now that Steam has become the biggest storefront in all of gaming, many NOLF fans had been hoping that the game would receive a remaster of some kind, with Night Dive Studios even looking into it at one point. However, trying to figure out who owns the rights to the No One Lives Forever series has been a puzzle no one has been able to solve, leaving the franchise to rot for decades now. Damn, if only there was a way of googling its name and scrolling down a bit. If only. We'll never know. Impossible mission. Mission impossible. Here's an honest question for you, right? There we go. Here's a question for you, right? If we did a video on abandonware games, which means you can download for free, not technically legally, but not technically going to go to jail for it, probably, is that something you'd watch? Also, would that be like us dobbing it in? Anyway, I've been Jimmy for Cultured Vultures. It's been good to have you, and thanks for watching. I'm not going to do the finger thing because I cut it open on a can of baked beans. I'm just going to hold it near there. There you go. Watch it.